Chapter 280 to 282. Toneri was not getting away unscathed from his counterattack either. After all, his explosive yellow ball exploded quite close to his body as well. He, however, had the advantage of having his body enhanced by the chakra mode, and as such, he only suffered some superficial scratches and slightly burnt skin. Pulling Rei's torn forearm away from his face, Toneri gave it a disdainful sneer before he threw it to the side as if he was just discarding trash. Rei stood up and looked at the handless arm he now sported, getting amused at the small spark of superiority that entered Toneri's gaze when he noticed where Rei was looking. Then again, Rei was not here to entertain him. He instantly used nature energy in tandem with Blackie's chakra to stimulate his cell growth, regrowing his forearm and hand at a visible pace. It was kind of a weaker form of a knockoff from what Tsunade was capable of doing, but after numerous spars with the said woman, it was of utmost necessity to develop a skill like this. Rei lifted his gaze back towards Toneri, flexing his new forearm. "I told you it will take a lot more than that," he said, making Toneri frown. "We will see about that," Toneri quietly said, getting ready for an attack. Rei instantly reacted, readying himself too, but what he didn't expect was puppets bursting from the ground around him, flooding him with their bodies in an attempt to obstruct his movements as they grabbed his various body parts. Not for the first time during the battle, Rei inwardly wondered how exactly could he have been sneaked upon despite his sensing capabilities. He almost understood it by now and was pretty sure it had to do with Toneri's projection-like jutsu. I still don't know if he can project the presence of his puppets somewhere away, which would be awesome if applied correctly, or if he is simply projecting a feeling that nothing is trying to sneak up on me, which wouldn't be too shabby either. Rei thought. Clearly, Toneri was using his jutsu. They simply were of the more subtle variety. Rei was about to use a jutsu to get rid of the puppets, restraining his movement, but Toneri was a step ahead and flashed near him, punching him in the gut, which sent Rei flying back despite the puppets rooting him in the place. The punch was quite powerful too, and the puppets anchoring him to the ground actually got ripped in half upon impact. Not that it prevented their remaining parts from clinging to Rei's body with all they got. Rei's body bounced a few times on the ground. Every time that happened, Rei made sure to twist his body at a right angle so some of the puppets were flung away from him. When the momentum from Toneri's punch was almost gone, Rei flipped his body midair, landing on his feet and sliding back a bit. Toneri was again right there, trying to maintain his current advantage and keep Rei out of his rhythm. His fist aimed at Rei's gut again. Toneri clearly wanted to strike the exact same spot as before. Rei, however, wasn't idle either, and managed to use his right foot to land a kick to Toneri's unguarded knee, unbalancing him enough that his punch to the gut went off its intended path and only briefly glanced Rei's hip. Rei instantly followed up with an elbow to the face, breaking Toneri's nose and dazing him, while a small blade made of lightning chakra formed on his other hand. He promptly jerked his right side of the body backward, propelling his left hand forward, aiming it alongside the lightning chakra blade at Toneri's chest. And for the second time during the battle, Rei was stumped when Toneri's form simply disappeared the second he almost got him. Instead of feeling flesh, blood, and burnt organs, all Rei felt on his hand was nothing. Toneri yet again used his projection to somehow fool him. Despite himself, Rei couldn't help but feel a grudging respect for that. Evading a killing blow 2 times in a row was something else. At least I got to know he can't use the projection during attacking. If he could, he would have used it at the start when I tried to exchange a lethal blow for a lethal blow with him. Rei inwardly nodded to himself, putting the information he collected about the technique together. He was also looking around, trying to spot Toneri, but before he managed to do that, another batch of puppets burst from the ground, showing that Toneri was trying to employ the same tactics as before. This time, however, Rei was expecting it, and before the puppets could yet again engulf him, a shockwave spread from his body, smashing them to such small pieces that puppets or not, they were no longer getting back up. Earth release magnetic push, Rei thought. He didn't need to be able to sense the attacks, expecting it was enough for him to deal with it. But I finally sensed a spark of something as the puppets appeared. He excitedly realized, and indeed it was very brief, but his senses gave him an inkling where Toneri was hiding. Looking straight ahead, Ray assumed a relaxed stance while lifting his eyebrow in an expecting manner as he asked, "Are you quite done yet?" He might not have been able to see him, but he knew Toneri was right there, in front of him. The battlefield stilled. Toneri appeared in the spot Ray suspected him to be at and looked at Ray with a weird expression, not expecting to be seen since he was projecting himself inside of the castle. For some reason, his second assault was a complete failure. Ray was not caught off guard for the second time, and as such, Toneri couldn't follow up the puppet attack with his taijutsu. He really had a hard time trying to understand what exactly happened there, but so be it. Toneri sighed. Never in my worst dream would I think a ninja from elemental nations could force me to this state. You should be flattered that you made me do. He raised his hand with a grave expression, his palm facing Ray as he pulsed his chakra. Nothing happened. Ray smiled at Toneri, sensing where his chakra went. If you are looking to activate the nice devices of mass destruction inside of the castle, you are so shit out of luck. He laughed. While he was entertaining Toneri, Ray's clones already snuck inside of the castle and sealed away both the Tensagen ball thingy that was supposed to be some kind of mass destruction weapon and the activator for the accumulated chakra in the moon. Toneri would no longer be able to use either of them, and watching his disgruntled expression was simply golden for Ray. After all, there was a reason why he didn't go all out right from the start. Toneri looked at his hand, his mind blanking out from not understanding why nothing was happening after he pulsed his chakra. It was only when he saw Ray's smug face did he understand what had exactly gone wrong. "What did you do?" he asked in a low, accusing tone, full of restrained anger. "I privatized your possessions. No need to thank me for taking your burden away," Ray nonchalantly quipped. "Privatized? You!" Toneri realized what Ray meant, and his expression twisted. "You thief! Return it!" He shouted, his anger overcoming his reason. "Return the legacy of my ancestors, you filthy robber! For this, I'm going to kill you in the most painful way possible. Return, Toneri completely lost his vigilance at that moment, and Ray instantly capitalized on it. For the first time during their fight, he enhanced his body with chakra, and Toneri couldn't possibly react in time with his mind flooded with impotent rage, as Ray slugged him right in the face, sending his body flying upward and crashing right through the roof of the excavated vast place where the Moon Palace was built. For that single punch, Ray held nothing back and used even Blackie's chakra to give it an extra oomph, which ensured Toneri was blasted right through the hard rock bed all the way to the surface of the moon. Fortunately for Toneri, his special chakra mode made such a blow just a slight annoyance. He was bruised quite a lot, but nothing was broken or damaged enough to get him out of commission. Ray could only marvel at the hardness of the guy's body. This was the very first time he got a glimpse at the ability of the Otsutsuki bloodline, and it had to be said, Ray was definitely impressed. The guy in front of him was far from pure Otsutsuki, yet the innate strength of his chakra was incredible. This only made Ray dead set on following his previous decision of hiding from the Otsutsuki clan. His planet was simply not ready to face them, if even a mutt like Toneri was capable of so much. Ray followed Toneri to the surface, glad the real battle would be fought far away from the underground castle. From the chakra levels Ray felt from Toneri, he knew the guy was so far just fooling around at best. His arrogance simply didn't let him see that he had to go all out from the start. Ray didn't fight to the fullest either, as in his opinion, Toneri was not really a skilled opponent. He was just an overpowered child who never faced someone who could match him and was always told he is special. He was just your everyday spoiled brat. Ray really couldn't muster the will to go all out from the start against him. When Ray finally got to the surface, he found Toneri already prepared for the continuation of their battle. His anger seemed to cease, but Ray had enough training in reading people to know Toneri was still seething deep inside. The punch just made him see that blind anger would not solve anything. Toneri's chakra pulsed to heights that even Ray's eyebrow rose at the absurdity he was feeling. It was as if the guy's chakra reserves expanded thrice over. An impossibility in itself, according to the current common sense Ray was using. Then again, these things usually needed frequent updates and adjustments in the ninja world. "I've had enough of this," Toneri proclaimed, and as quick as his chakra surged, it again dropped and started seeping into the ground. Ray instantly prepared to deal with strong, large-scale earth-based ninjutsu, but when even 20 seconds later nothing happened, he had no idea what was going on. Toneri didn't move. He just watched Ray, waiting for him to do something in complete calmness. Ray knew his opponent did something, but he had no clue what. "This projection technique of his is starting to be a real pain in the ass," he thought. Being able to dodge attacks with it, fool chakra sensing, and to some extent even nature sensing was a massive advantage, but doing that for techniques. Ray was just glad Toneri didn't yet realize what a powerful tool he had. Otherwise, he really just might be forced to take the kid seriously in this fight. This time, Ray was at a disadvantage. He knew that waiting would be of no benefit to him, so after observing for 20 seconds and getting no conclusion, Ray decided to attack. He stepped forward in preparation to lunge at his opponent. But his would-be attack instantly ceased as the ground shifted underneath him as if it was liquid. It engulfed his right leg and squeezed. Only his chakra enhancement prevented his limb from being torn away. Ray quickly realized what happened. It was not that Ray couldn't find the area of effect of Toneri's jutsu. He felt nothing out of the ordinary because the entire vast area they were in was already under Toneri's influence when he checked for the first time. With the passive cloaking Toneri's chakra possessed, it simply seemed nothing special was going on despite him soaking the ground in his chakra. Cursing, Ray used a surge of his lightning elemental chakra in his right leg to break through the rock trapping it, and leaped backward, pushing some of his chakra into the ground below him to somewhat mitigate Toneri's influence over that area. Ray could feel the bones in his right leg creaking and winced. The rock of the moon was obviously a lot harder and tougher than the one on Earth. Being bathed in the residue of Kaguya's chakra would do that to a planet. This brought a nasty disadvantage for Ray, though. He was a lightning element user, which was supposedly weak against Earth element, and the Earth on the moon was so damn hard he had to increase the potency of his chakra if he wanted to even scratch it. His previous surge into his right leg was supposed to utterly obliterate the ground around him, creating a crater, yet it was only barely enough to free his leg from its bindings. Ray quickly realized that his strongest element was basically next to useless against his newly determined opponent. Toneri calmly watched, no longer smug, as Ray got out of his initial attack and secured some ground for himself. Toneri no longer played around, understanding his opponent was someone tough. Puppets would be of no use for him in this fight, not even as a momentary distraction. It was time to start using the real jutsu. Ray didn't have a lot of time to be idle. The ground around him decided to mercilessly attack him, creating spikes, tendrils, and sometimes even hurling itself at him in a mud-like substance that looked to be semi-solid enough to carry quite a lot of blunt force. Ray weaved through it all, evading attack after attack while also feeding the ground under himself with his chakra, fighting for dominance over the ground with each step. For a whole 10 minutes, Ray was on the run, evading Toneri's attacks that tried to flood him in waves of rock while he tried to find a weakness to this technique. Eventually, Ray indeed found it and started to seep his water element chakra into the ground in a way that prevented Toneri from instantly reclaiming his control over it. This slowed the pace of his attacks a lot, making the deadly dance of offense and evasion almost a breeze for Ray. Toneri naturally realized this flaw of his strategy and decided to change his plan. The attack from the liquid ground ceased, giving Rei room to breathe for a moment. That didn't last long, however, as the ground behind Toneri shifted, starting to rise in 3 piles towards the black sky of the moon, not stopping until 3 rock golems the size of Bijou stood in front of Rei, whose brain momentarily halted. "You gotta be kidding me," he muttered. This might really require Blackie's help, after all. The ground trembled as the massive rock golems shook themselves awake and aimed their attention at Rei, who still tried to comprehend how the fight could escalate so fast. Not a moment earlier, their battle consisted of a bona fide slugfest, yet. Now the kid wanted to pull out mountain-sized monsters into the fray. Needless to say, Rei was not about to face these golems with just his fists or jutsu. Yeah, screw this shit. A blackish chakra cloak instantly engulfed Rei's body, causing Toneri to feel a bad premonition that came true not a second later when the chakra cloak outwardly expanded, forming a mountain-sized, 10-tailed black fox that promptly roared at the golems, fiercely shaking the ground for kilometers around. Toneri stood rooted in his spot, stunned into speechlessness because he didn't expect Rei to be able to match his golems. Despite his momentary lapse, the golems didn't wait for orders and promptly attacked, rushing at the massive Blackie. Each step called forth a new earthquake, rippling the ground under their feet in a way that let them get a massive momentum. Contrary to the normal expectations, the golems, while sluggish, were quite fast. It didn't take them long to close the gap between themselves and Blackie as they tried to tackle him to the ground. Blackie, however, was much nimbler and managed to sidestep the first golem before he jumped upwards, twisting its body in a way that the second and the third golem missed him by a slight margin as they crashed to the ground, spreading untold devastation all around their landing place due to their weight. Rei could almost feel Kaguya's chakra seeped deep in the moving lumps of animated moon rock, and he couldn't help but thank his past self for not choosing the easy way out and simply getting one of the 9 already existing Bijou. As in this current situation, he had no doubt they would have been suppressed by that exact chakra, making this an incredibly disadvantageous fight for him. But since his Bijou was self-made, Kaguya's chakra residue acted as nothing more than an extremely strong enhancer for the rock golems. Blackie landed on the ground and instantly charged a Bijou Dama, shooting it at the 3 golems still sprawled on the ground, creating a citywide new crater on the moon's surface. A brief flash of heat spread through the surroundings as a massive amount of dust flew into the air, completely obstructing visibility. Blackie and Rei knew a single Bijou Dama would not be the finishing move in this battle, but they wanted to see exactly how much damage it would cause. Unfortunately for them, when the dust cloud somewhat cleared, the 3 golems were already rising up, sending gusts of wind all around. They indeed sported a layer of molten and jagged rock on their surface, but it was obvious no major damage was caused to them. Rei briefly glanced at the place Toneri was at, before he sent his golems to the fray, and frowned. The guy already used his projection to hide, letting the golems do the heavy lifting for him. The golems tried to surround Blackie, who was standing still, waiting for them to come closer as Rei already conveyed his plan to him. When they finally approached, trying to get the fox into their grasp, Blackie again dodged by the slightest margin, but this time he used his tails to trap the 3 golems. For each of them, 3 tails were used, binding their limbs and torso, trying to keep the 3 hulking and struggling masses of rock still with varied success. Blackie now had all 3 golems bound, but that also meant the golems had Blackie pinned down. In an instant, the fight became a comparison of brute strength, which was somewhat unfavorable for Blackie in 1 versus 3 scenarios. Seeing that, Rei decided to give Blackie a bit more help. He started to use a chakra from Blackie to charge a jutsu. Rei knew he wasn't good enough in the earth element to do much about the golems, but slightly weaken them, which was simply not worth it. Wind element was also out since the air was giving these jutsus quite a boost. Unfortunately, there was a vacuum on the moon. Using fire on rocks wasn't much better, and lightning had already proved to be ineffective earlier, so Ray had no other choice but to use water. An arduous task, considering there wasn't oxygen and hydrogen in the atmosphere of the moon, therefore Ray had to form water just from his chakra alone. Thankfully, Blackie had enough chakra to do this. Clapping his hands together, Ray inwardly exclaimed, "Water release! Crushing, exploding shock waves!" A massive torrent of highly pressurized water, as if exploded outwardly from Blackie right after the fox unbound them from its tails, smashing into the three golems with such a force it flung them back, despite their huge size. Large gashes were made on the rocky surface of the golems on the impact. The second one even lost an arm, while the third lost a leg. Not that it mattered, as the golems regrew them almost instantly, but Ray still counted it as his win. The real aim of the jutsu was different anyway. Getting the golems away from him and Blackie was nice, but he really just wanted to remake the battlefield. The jutsu was finished, but that didn't mean the newly made water magically disappeared. Instead, the battlefield was submerged in a small ocean of water, reaching Blackie and the golems up to their knees, which was far harder terrain to move in for bulky and sluggish rock golems. Realizing its advantage, Blackie instantly jumped back into the fray, smashing and smacking the golems around like little children by using its innate agility. While the fight went on, Toneri, completely drenched and annoyed beyond all measures, watched the titanic battle from what he thought was a safe distance. Clearly, he was a bit wrong about that since the water still reached him. Who in their right mind would create an ocean of water on the moon anyway? If not for his chakra cloak, Toneri thought he would have drowned right then and there. Well, there wasn't much of an opportunity to learn how to swim on the moon. Embarrassed enough, Toneri didn't like how his golems started to lose. It was already 10 minutes since the battlefield became too watery for them, and they still couldn't get out of the onslaught of the fox. "Should I create more golems?" Toneri said to himself. "No, it is just a battle of attrition. My golems might be disadvantaged for now, but I will win. They cost far too little chakra to maintain, and whatever jutsu that is, I doubt the thief can sustain that fox avatar for long," he reasoned, not really knowing what Biju was. "For now, let's just observe." Toneri was totally certain that in time he would win. That's why he was completely shocked when he got a reply. "Are you sure about that?" An amused voice sounded from behind Toneri, scaring him out of his wits and causing him to turn around, only for his head to separate from his body. Ray watched with bated breath as Toneri's now headless body slowly slumped to the ground, not disappearing this time, making him release a breath of relief. "Nailed it," Ray whispered, flicking his sword to the side to clean the blood from it. To be honest, Ray found Toneri's projection jutsu really annoying, as it prevented him from getting in the decisive blow whenever he had the opportunity. That's why he was not sure he could sneak up on Toneri and finish the fight in one strike. Ray even called out for Toneri before striking, all in order to momentarily distract the kid from using the said jutsu. Fortunately, it worked. Ray hummed to himself, watching as the three golems started crumbling into the watery fields, leaving only the majestic sight of a titanic black fox standing all alone in the devastated landscape of the moon, covered in water.